So we're super excited to have Nate Slade here with us today. I have met Nate here and worked with him a couple of different times here at the Innovation Center, but I don't know him super well, which I guess kind of makes this easier because a lot of my questions are genuine questions that I don't know about you yet. But I also cheated a little bit and asked Scott for some direction in what kind of questions to ask you about, since he knows you a lot better. I tried to get him to just come interview you instead so that I didn't have to be up here, but
that would have been entertaining.
Yeah, so instead of doing an official bio, we just like to kind of learn a little bit about you as we go. So usually I like to start off with a question of asking you about your background a little bit, and more specifically with you, like what led you to entrepreneurship and knowing you wanted to kind of live that life, if you will, but
Yeah.
to what led you to start your first business? Like, did you study business, or what kind of background led you to starting your first business and diving into that realm?
The first business was a lawn mowing business when I was 12. I lived in Idaho and like 6 miles outside of town. So I built a little trailer, took like the tires off my sister's bike and made a trailer so that I could haul the lawnmower into town. And that was the first time that I started making more money than I guess I needed, right? Because as a 12-year-old, you really don't need that much. And so that was kind of exciting. And then,
but even as a 12-year-old, you already had kind of that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, kind of. And my family was, I guess, more poor. And so pretty much like if you wanted new shoes or new clothes, they're like, you gotta go earn the money if you want it. So it kind of just put it on us, which I think was helpful.
Right. Yeah. Kind of gave you the drive a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what about as you got a little bit older? Did you decide to go to school? Did you decide to study business?
So I was studying business. I didn't really know. I knew I was going to be in business, but I didn't know entrepreneurship. I didn't even know that was a category, at least that phrase.
Right.
And before I went on a church mission, I needed to save up some money. So I worked for a lady that flipped homes, and she was really cool. She paid me $15 an hour. At the time, I thought it was a ton of money. And I worked really hard and fast, and so then she changed it to piece rate, and she's like, instead of making $200 to shingle that roof, I'll pay you $800 to shingle the roof. And so my mind started opening, like, oh man, you can make a lot more money doing piece rate. And then right before I left, she was really cool. She's like, even though you made $15,000 with me over this summer, you made me $85,000. And I just worked for my house. And I was like, what? And then that's when she was like, I'm the entrepreneur, and I bring the team together to pull it off. So that was kind of when it started to be like, oh, there's more. So yeah, and then went on the mission, came back, and started up a business that failed miserably, and it was a great experience. So yeah, just kind of started going through that process.
Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that? Because I mean, I think a lot of times we like to focus on the successes, the big successful businesses, but most successful business owners have started a business that wasn't successful.
Yeah.
So do you mind speaking to that a little bit more, and how you realized, because at some point you have to realize this business isn't working or it's failing and I need to get out. Do you mind speaking to that a little bit more?
Yeah. So when I was 21, I was just trying to find something that I could do that was summer sales type thing, where I wasn't doing the sales. I wanted to create the opportunity for other people to do summer sales. And so I decided to do rock chip repair, like windshield repair. And so I drove to Eugene, Oregon, got trained how to do everything, thought I was all official, and came back, started doing it myself down in, or I guess not down now, I was in Idaho, so it's up in Bountiful. And that was going pretty well, and then I decided, all right, the model's figured out, and now I'm just gonna scale it. So I bought a bunch of equipment and tents, and I hired a bunch of people, and everybody that I was talking with was telling me that I needed to pay them piece rate, but I was like, no, I'll just pay them a fixed, hourly rate. Ended up losing a lot of money because I learned the difference between variable expenses and fixed expenses. And like my employees didn't stake the tents down, so when it was windy, I'd blow the tents over and hit cars. So then I had insurance claims, and it was just like all these things that as a 21-year-old I didn't really know to even think about. So ended up losing 30 grand that summer, I thought I was gonna like take over the world, you know, as a
Yeah.
young guy, and I was just like, well, that was humbling.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's so. Where did you go from that point? 'Cause I mean, that's pretty discouraging as a 21-year-old, and you just lost 30 grand. So,
Yeah.
you know, to be
Student
probably a
loans.
little bit discouraged and maybe wondering, geez, do I want to take the risk of starting another business? Or where did you go from that point? How did you decide to jump back into something?
So from there, I actually graduated college because that was just right before I graduated. So I was doing that through the summers.
Right.
And I became the financial controller, which is a high and mighty calling for a startup company. But I was just a glorified bookkeeper, pretty much. And it was a skincare product that we had networked into the inventor, and so then we got it into Walgreens and Walmart and CVS, and that was a cool experience to learn how to get into retail. I have no desire to do it again.
Yeah.
There are better paths, in my opinion. But then things weren't going so well there on the, I guess, the management team front. So I decided I wanted to try something else. So I left that opportunity and moved down to Arizona to flip homes with my brother. So I graduated college in 2008, which was a great year to graduate with a business finance degree. Yeah. And actually, I think that kind of forced my hand too, because I was studying business finance. I was interviewing with Wells Fargo and, you know, all the big banks, and they were on a hiring freeze.
Right.
And I was like, for how long? And they go, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
So it kind of forced me to start my own thing because there was really no other option.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So, and then tell us a little bit about what you consider your first successful business. Was it when you went to go start flipping homes, or?
Yeah. So flipping homes was good, but we were on the wrong side of that. We were the contractors. So we made good money. We did 65 homes in 18 months. So it was a lot of work, really fast, but we weren't the investors or the developer. We weren't that side of it. And then at that point, I had started a couple other small businesses that didn't really do very well either. And I realized that the missing link was marketing. Like, you can have the best thing in the world, and if you can't get it out to the world, then it's doomed to fail, or destined to fail, I guess. So I just did some networking, and I lived in Phoenix at the time, to find out who the best marketing firm was or I guess the marketing expert in that area was. And the name Joe Polish kept surfacing as I was talking to people. So I went in and just kind of walked into his office and was like, I know you're not hiring, but I want to work for you. I'll work for free if I have to. And he was pretty nice. And so he gave me a job on the spot and started working for him. Turns out they weren't a marketing agency. He just was really good at marketing. He actually ran a mastermind group where successful entrepreneurs would come in and network and do deals with each other. And so I was actually Merrick's role. I was sitting behind the camera recording the interviews, which was awesome because I got to see all these deals happen live, but I was kind of like a fly on the wall.
Right, you just got to sit and watch and listen, take everything in.
Right, and just seeing what books they're reading, their mindset, how they approached problems, how they dealt with problems was really insightful. So worked for them for a couple of years, and then I ventured off into e-commerce.
Great. Yeah, that was actually one of the things that Scott mentioned that I should ask you about was with Joe Polish, is that his name? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they called that Genius Networking, right?
Genius Network. Yep,
Okay.
that was what it's called. I thought I was interviewing for Piranha Marketing, and when I got there, it was Genius Network.
Genius Network. Okay, awesome. So what would you say, what's like the biggest takeaway that you've kept with you all these years from that group? Sorry to put you on the spot with that one. That wasn't one of my planned questions.
Biggest takeaway? That's tough because there was a lot. Probably the biggest one would be who, not how, actually. They were all operating large, successful businesses, but they couldn't do it alone. So they would bring in skilled technicians, is how they would refer to them. In any category of knowledge that they needed, they would bring in an expert rather than trying to go from ground up and become that expert.
Right.
That's probably the most powerful.
Okay. So rather than trying to become the expert in every field within your business,
Right.
bringing somebody in.
And as a startup entrepreneur, you kind of have to do all of them.
Right.
But just know that you're not expert in probably any of them.
Yeah.
You have to do them all good enough until you can start to afford them. And that's when the business starts to gain momentum, because you can bring in that higher level of expertise in each of the categories, and that's kind of when it gets legs.
Okay. So do you think is that something that maybe should be a goal for most startup companies, is to, like you said, do it good enough until you can afford somebody to hire an expert in marketing or an expert in accounting or an expert in each field of your business?
Yeah, one of the members of Genius Network was Dan Sullivan, and he runs a company called Strategic Coach. It's like one of the biggest entrepreneur coaching programs out there. It was really cool to kind of learn from him. And what he said was, when you start a business, you are the maverick, the gunslinger. You kind of make it all happen until $100,000. Like, you grind it out until you're netting 100 grand, and then at that point, you're making enough to pay your bills and take some of that to pay for other experts or other team members, and then that's when you can't really bring them on before that.
Right.
Because you don't have enough money to pay them, unless you have extra cash sitting around.
Right.
But most don't.
So that's kind of the goal, is be profiting $100,000 a year.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Grind it out, get to that point, sprint to that point as fast as you can, and then he's like, the hard part is once you get into that rhythm where you're doing that grind and you get to 100,000, you kind of get stuck in that gear, and that's where a lot of entrepreneurs burn out, is because they continue to do that all the way up to $1 million or $2 million, but they're still doing everything.
Right.
And so then they get overloaded and burnt out.
Okay. And would you say, do you think that $100,000 number is still about the right amount with recent years of inflation, or do you think that's gone up?
That's a good question. Yeah, that was in 2015, so maybe 150.
Yeah.
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 Things have changed.
Yeah, dramatically increased the last couple of years. Okay, awesome. So you kind of led into that eventually you got into the e-commerce side. So can you take us through a little bit about your decision-making process and how you decided to go that route, and kind of how you entered into the e-commerce field? Because I think that's something that a lot of people here are doing some or are interested in at least some aspect of e-commerce.
Can we get a show of hands? Who's doing e-commerce or wants to? Just so I get an idea. Okay.
It's a fair amount.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually, it was another member in Genius Network that was creating a course teaching people how to do e-commerce, specifically with Amazon. And I had an opportunity to sit down with him at lunch, and I was just kind of picking his brain, like, what is this thing? I mean, I knew what Amazon was. I was buying stuff on there already, but I didn't realize that there was a business opportunity behind it. So he kind of walked me through that and sold me on it. He's a good salesman. So I ended up buying his course, which was way too much. It was $6,500. But I think it was the push that got me going. I just was looking for something, because I knew working for Genius Network was good for the education, but I was stuck at an hourly situation, so I needed to find something that I could sink my teeth into. I looked at buying a lawn mowing business. There was another one that was selling cactus all over Arizona. So I was in the acquisition mode. I was trying to figure out something to buy or to get started with. And then when I was talking to him, I was like, I think this is kind of where I would fit well. So.
Okay. So you bought this Amazon course. So then I wanted to get into the process of a little bit. If somebody wants to sell on Amazon or Etsy or other types of marketplaces, what's kind of your process for both generating ideas and then also selecting a product to, how do you know this is the product, this is the one I want to move forward with, and kind of the process you go through with that decision?
Yeah, so it has changed over the years. So like when I first started, there weren't a ton of tools out there that would give me the data, because right now there are so many tools out there that show you exactly how many units this product is selling, and you can dig into each competitor and find all of their products and find their sources, and just there's so much information out there, it's kind of crazy. But when I was starting, it was really what looks like this category is selling a lot and the images are horrible. That was the filter. It was like, because back then it was, most Amazon listings had one image and it was a horrible, just quick shot, right? And so if they were selling a lot and there were 3 or 4 people that were selling good volume and they all had horrible pictures and their, their descriptions weren't very good, essentially the marketing wasn't very good, then that was something worth looking into. And so we started getting into those. And that worked for a couple of years, but then everybody kind of got wise to that strategy. And so all the marketing leveled up. All the listings started to have high definition images and the sales copy wasn't getting in better. And so your ability to compete was lowering. So then I shifted to inventing products and actually having a moat around it where I didn't have a lot of competition in those spaces.
So at first it was basically, you're looking to just basically see
Totally.
who's my weakest competition. That's
right.
the industry I'm going to go, or the type of product I'm going to go after.
And that, to a point, that's still the case. You're looking at like what markets have a lot of buying demand, but the options are weak.
Right.
And the way you can tell a lot of times is just by reading the reviews of the competition. And if there's a lot of negativity, but there's not a lot of options, then there's a fertile ground.
Okay, so that's somewhere with an opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, so then as you shifted to where it's like, okay, now I'm going to create new products, like you mentioned it can still be kind of similar. So are you typically looking for, like, I want this new idea that nobody else has yet, or is it still kind of looking for maybe something you can change to make better that already exists?
So, both.
Yeah.
Because it depends on the idea, right? So the first idea that was like true invention, my friend actually brought to me. It was a hose that had a bunch of holes in it, and we attached it to the trampoline, and it just sprayed water on kids while they jumped. And when you saw it, it was like, oh yeah, like, duh, that looks awesome. Like it was just really kind of an exciting thing to see. And so I knew the marketing on it was going to be really easy.
Right. And that's something nobody else had done yet.
It didn't exist, yeah, at that point. So brand new product, brand new category. There were, like, trampoline accessories when we first started it were springs and a ladder, getting on the trampoline. By the time we sold that business, there were hundreds of knockoffs and very little new innovation in the space. They were all just knockoffs. So we were kind of the leader. We would come out with new categories. We did a light and a Bluetooth speaker setup on it, so it was like this disco ball light thing for kids. And then we did another one where they had these, like, those soaker balls. You could soak them in water and have a water ball fight, but like you do it in the trampoline cage, and so the balls are always really close, so it was just chaos. So yeah, if you go on Amazon now, there's just knockoffs on all of those. Right. But they kind of just would watch us to see what we would do. So we would have like 1.5 seasons with no competition, and then it would just like
everybody's
everybody come in. So we would compete by innovating, staying ahead of it.
Okay. And so with that, with products like this, oftentimes when somebody comes to me and they have a new product idea, one of their first questions is, should I get a patent for this? And so various people that I've talked to, a lot of people say it's not worth getting a patent unless it's some high-tech medical device that you really want to protect the property. But if it's something like that, people are going to find a way to basically copy it anyways, and so it's not worth spending the money and just running with it. What would be your advice or
that's a tricky
comments
one
with that as far as patents go?
It depends on what your end goal is. Like when we sold that business, the acquirer did want patents. And luckily we had provisional patents and we had, patent applications that were submitted, and that wasn't sufficient for them. But for us, we didn't really need the patents for what we were doing. So it just depends. If you're planning on exiting, buyers do like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If they're more of a sophisticated buyer, they'll like it more. But it's tough because we didn't get those patents until right before the exit. And we got them for the exit. Like we knew that that's what they were going to want, so that's why we did it.
Okay.
But to actually run the business, no, because and there's different types, right? There's a design patent, and then there's provisional,
Right.
or not provisional, but what's the word? Utility patent. There it is. Utility patents are like 20 grand. Design patents are 2 to 4. So, but then again, design patents are easier to go around. So, I don't know. I don't think it adds that much value unless it's a lot. It has opportunity to be a huge product.
Okay, that makes sense. So with this business, correct me if I'm wrong, with this business, you're basically creating all types of like games, outdoor type of games, trampoline accessories.
That one,
things
the
like
one that
that.
I was just talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that one. So
Yep.
how did you, I mean, you were ahead of your competition, business is going pretty well. How did you decide when it was time to come up with an exit strategy and that it was going to be time to sell this business and move on to something else?
COVID.
Yeah.
Yep. So I mean, I've always been taught you always want to sell when you're going up. If you have a down year, it's a lot harder to sell, right? You got to really pitch it hard. Your multiple drops, the valuation drops, and with COVID, we didn't know what was going to happen. But turns out, when they send everybody home and their kids, and then they have to work from home and their kids are home, parents want their kids out of the home. And so they bought trampoline accessories like crazy. We sold so much.
I bet.
So it was a huge year for us, and we just were like, I don't think we're going to we won't be able to match this next year, right? It's just like artificial demand.
Right.
So then we were like, let's just ride this wave and sell it now. And so that's what we did.
Okay. And so you say you had a business partner in this.
He's the one that had the original idea.
Okay, awesome. So that's another question that I often get when clients come in is they've received advice from different people that some say, you never do business with family. Some say you can, but you need to have everything on paper and have it legally separated and the business legally split. So what would you say to anybody that's looking into business partnerships? What advice would you give them there?
Be careful. I have done business with family, and it worked out great for several years. It started to not be great, and we both saw that, and like our friendship and relationship was more important than the business, so we both were like, let's separate this now.
Yeah.
And it's been good ever since, so that worked out fine, but I've seen a lot go south.
Right.
Yeah. So partnership with family's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were like really good friends before, and we're really good friends now, but there was a point there where it started to have more friction than we felt comfortable having.
So just kind of weigh your, like you said, be careful with it and kind of
know
make
when
sure
to
that you
know when to
have-
back out. Like maybe talk about that before. Like, hey, we're all gung ho now, but if there's ever a point where we're not, how are we going to separate at that point?
Yeah.
And both of you have a ripcord that you
Right.
can pull out. Just business isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to ruin those kind of relationships.
And so would you recommend making sure that's all set up legally as well?
I'm probably not a good person to ask that. Almost all of my partnerships are handshake deals. We don't have anything written down legally.
Yeah.
It's probably not a smart thing.
Yeah, that makes sense though. But I love what you said there, and like I think being able to look at yourself and know that you value your relationships more and be able to kind of have a plan with that going into it.
I think a lot of people are afraid that if they make something successful, they'll never be able to do it again. Mm-hmm. And so then they fight for it tooth and nail, and it's just not true.
Right.
Like you can do it again, and it's not. Yeah, there's so much opportunity out there. It's not worth that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and actually I kind of believe it's almost the opposite. Once you do it once and you kind of learn the process, I think I was talking with Scott about that there was like some millionaires that said like once you learn how to become a millionaire, then it's not that hard. Like
right.
It's hard to do it, but once you learn how to do it, you could do it again if you started with nothing.
In fact, Genius Network is the spot where I really learned that, because a lot of the guys in there, I mean, to be in there, the average business owner was doing 20 million annually. So they're all pretty big players.
Yeah.
And most of them had major failures. And it was to that point, like they were making millions, and then they were making millions again within a year. So once you have the knowledge and the skills, you can duplicate it.
Yeah, awesome. So we talked about the process a little bit for generating ideas and product selection. Once you have a product that you've selected, you want to pursue it, what's your process for validation, validating the product?
Yeah, again, going back to those tools, I want to see like known demand. I want, with whether you're using Helium-10 or, you know, there's a whole suite of tools out there. I want to see sales volume from a lot of different sellers that are no-namers, no brands. Because if it's brand driven, you're going to have a hard time coming. Like, I can't sell diapers better than Huggies.
Right.
I can't do it,
Yeah,
right?
hard to jump in and compete when they're
they've
so
totally
well known.
dominated that space. But if I can see 4, 5, 6, 7 brands I've never heard of, and they're doing really good volume, and their marketing is okay, and in the reviews there's a lot of things that people are like, I wish it did this, or I wish it had this, or, you know, that kind of stuff, then I would feel comfortable getting in there. You know, that's kind of ways. I try to find demand first, and then fit a product to the demand, rather than trying to find demand, create demand. You can't. That's one thing they taught too. Is you can't create demand. It either exists or it doesn't. You're just channeling it. So are you in a spot where you can channel demand to your product?
Right, be able to take a percentage of the market share, the demand that's already there.
Yeah, and it can be broad, like with the trampoline stuff. That didn't exist before, but the demand was outdoor water toys.
Right.
That's what moms were looking for. So we were just channeling some of that demand to ours.
Okay.
And then we kind of created that category.
And was that your target market then, is moms, women with kids? And
Yeah, I mean, our main search terms were outdoor water toys. That's what we put all of our effort into ranking for. And that's kind of what took off.
Okay, awesome. So then with sourcing the products is the next thing that I want to go. Scott says you're the master sourcer. How do you go about sourcing a product? You know, who to have make it. How do you find the best price point between, you know, finding the balance between price and quality? What's kind of the process that you go through?
So you're going to want to talk to a lot of factories, preferably all over the world. Most likely, I was just talking to my dad about this the other night actually. So if you go to Bolivia, they're going to have a set number of products that they are the best in the world at. You go to China, and it's kind of all products, right? They represent so many products. So your most likely bet to find some quick wins are in China. But there's going to be overflow countries that do a massive volume in that particular product. Like, for example, we're sourcing base molding, like in homes. So anything that's made out of MDF, one of the world leader countries of exporting that is Chile. So we're going to Chile for it. Even though we could go to China, we're going to go to Chile for that. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is go to China first, get some initial conversations going, some prices back, but don't like be married to China. Like at that point, you can use that factory, but you want to find backup factories outside of China, just in case. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
things go wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
So
I think that's great advice. I actually was just talking to another business owner earlier today that said that their business basically was put on hold because they had one source and it was in China, and then something politically happened where they couldn't send anything in.
Yep.
And so then they had to kind of scramble, and they ended up finding a source in Taiwan. But now they have Taiwan and India and China and a source in various different places across the world. So
yeah, and it's kind of a bummer. Well, it's not a bummer, I guess, but their infrastructure is just built for it. Like they have all these websites out there that are search engines for factories, and so it's just really easy to find them.
Right.
But other countries don't have that set up. Like if you go to Mexico and you want to find all these factories, they don't have an Alibaba for Mexico. So it's really difficult to find factories there, even though there's good factories there and they make high quality products. Just finding them is a lot harder.
Yeah. Okay. So China's just kind of positioned themselves where it's. I think most of us, when you think, okay, I'm going to source something from outside the U.S., you usually think China's the
Yeah.
worst place you go to.
Yeah.
So they've kind of positioned
And-
themselves there, even though there are other viable options.
I'm not saying avoid them,
Right.
right? You'll most likely be doing business with them first and for a while, but don't stop there. Like
Right.
you want to find some backup options outside of that.
Okay, great. So then, what about, so you come up with a new product, you validate, you figure out where to source it. How do you come up with the best marketing and sales strategy? There's, marketing people come at you from every direction, and here we'll do your website for you, we'll do radio ads for you, we'll do
Right.
Facebook ads, Google ads. How do you decide what's going to be your best avenue? What's going to give you the best return on your investment when it comes to marketing?
That's a really big question. So,
I know a lot of it's going to depend on your business and your industry.
Yeah. To simplify it, you want to go where there are known audiences for your product, known buyer pools. And that could be Facebook, that could be Amazon, there's so many different platforms, and which one's the easiest to access. For a long time it was Amazon, because you could throw a product up there and there wasn't a lot of competition. So there's this huge buying pool, the whole country, but there just wasn't a lot of good marketing around it. That's since changed.
Right.
It's gotten a lot more competitive there. Facebook has amazing targeting and a large buyer pool. I know everybody's like, Facebook's the old person one. Well, old people have money, so it's a good platform to be on. But these up and coming platforms are the same. But don't get distracted by a new platform. Just like, can you find your audience easily, and can you reach them? Is there a way to pay to reach them? Really, like when you break down marketing, it's 80% of the success is the list. Who are you talking to? If it's a hungry crowd that wants your product, you could have horrible language, not like foul language, but just like your sales copy is not very good, your pictures are horrible, and your offer is weak, and you'll still do very well because you have the right audience. You could have not the right audience and everything else is just nailed perfectly, and you'll think that your marketing failed when your marketing was actually perfect. It just wasn't talking to the right market.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And how do you make sure that you have that you have good marketing going to the right audience? Do you have a way to verify that, or is it just through sales and trial and error?
Spend a little to learn a lot. If there's a way to split test, you're going to split test a lot of different pools, groups of people, and when one starts to, you'll see they're running and these two will take off and the others are kind of flat. Kill the losers and scale the winners. I've heard a lot of people try, I've done Facebook ads, it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, did you do them right? Did you do it to the right There's so many variables, like you can't really say, you could sell anything with newspaper if you did it right. Right? So there's a lot of split testing that goes on. I'm trying to think how into the weeds to get on this.
You can go a little bit deeper. We still got a little bit of time.
There's a lot with marketing, but you can simplify it to, can I talk to the right audience, and can I give them a compelling offer? A great book that I recommend people read, maybe skip chapter 1 because he has really foul language, is $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy. He breaks down the art of an offer, and it is awesome. You can take a mediocre offer and make it supercharged, really powerful. So that's a big piece of it. And then a good way to find the audience is, since you're looking to see if there's competition that's selling these products, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how you're deciding to get into it.
Right.
There's a lot of no-namers that are winning. You can look to see what they're doing for marketing, see where they're marketing, because they've obviously tapped into some of these pools.
Yeah.
And so then you'll go to the same pools with a better offer. So that's probably the easiest answer. You want to model success. Find the people that are doing it in the space that you're in successfully, and go to those same pools just with a better offer.
Okay. Awesome. I like that. So that was actually the next question I was going to ask you is about books. You recommended it, and that was called $100 million, or the art of
$100 million offers.
Okay, $100 million offers.
Yeah.
Okay. So what books have you read that have had the largest impact on you and like your daily life, things that you still apply in your daily life today?
So I kind of break books. Are you talking about business books?
It can be, yeah, or if there's other books that you feel like have still helped you in build your business.
So I kind of chunk them into like different categories. So there's mindset books, strategy books, and tactic books.
And all of those, I'm sure, kind of channel into still helping your business.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Maybe if you could recommend one from each category, then.
Yeah. So there's a trifecta. There's 3 books that are super powerful. Well, actually 4. 4 books that are really powerful together. Who Not How, The Gap and the Gain, The One Thing, and Be Your Future Self Now. And essentially, Be Your Future Self Now helps you to clearly articulate where you want to be. So that one's a little more mindset focused. The Gap and the Gain is a very clear way to forgive yourself when you fall short, because you definitely will. And Who Not How is how to accelerate your journey there by utilizing other people, right, that have those skills already. They can get you the result faster with a better result for cheaper than you doing it. And then The One Thing is how to really channel your energy into the few things that really matter and that only you can do.
Okay, great. I may get that list of books so I can email it out to everybody too and send that. So, okay, so let's shift a little bit, and I want to leave time for questions at the end. But can you tell us a little bit about what are you doing now? What business ventures are you involved in now? Are you still involved in professional networking groups? Just tell us a little bit about where you're at this stage now in your career.
Yeah. So, I am part owner in a company called InnerSourced, and we are helping people create side incomes. And the way we're doing that is we are a sourcing and logistics company that supplies materials for local businesses. So these are buyers, clients that need a set amount of stuff on a monthly basis, and so it's just a recurring model. And that would be one lesson that I've kind of glossed over that has been huge. If you can get into providing value to somebody that will pay you on a recurring basis, you have to do the sale once, the marketing once, and you reap the profits for months or years or decades.
It's almost like subscription-based, but not necessarily subscription.
Yeah.
Just where they're
Subscription-based gets a lot of focus on social media. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one getting those ads, but it's like, you can create this subscription for whatever. Right. And that's true. It is true. You can add value that way. But the reason that I like it, there actually were a couple of years there where business got super tight. And it was like, ooh, do we shut this down or do we keep it going, kind of a thing. And we started trimming the fat everywhere. We were cutting expenses everywhere. But there were some expenses that we just couldn't cut because they were a critical element to the business. And so later I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to supply the critical element that can't be cut. And so that's kind of where we stumbled into this. So we supply cabinet hardware to cabinet shops. Like, they need them, right? They can't do cabinet shops without the hardware. And so as long as the quality is the same or higher than what they're used to, and they're getting it for less, or the service is higher, when push comes to shove and they're cutting things back, they're not going to cut you. Right. And they need it every month. So it's not like they're signing up for subscription.
But in essence, can't stay in business unless
in essence they are, right? It's something that they just are going to need forever. And that's why I like it on the business front. Plus, personal subscription stuff, people's income is here. And so the amount of money that you can go after for subscription is limited. Businesses' income, significantly higher.
Right, or if it's going to help them generate more income, then
Right, and the beauty of it, most businesses are in the business of growing. So a lot of the cabinet shops that we started with were small. when we first started with them, and now they're quite large. We didn't have to do anything for that growth. They put in the energy to grow their business. We're just the benefactors of that. So, coming back, sorry, there's a little bit of tangent, but that's what we're helping people do, is create those supply chains with their network, right? So maybe they know somebody that is a business owner that would benefit from something like this. We help them facilitate that, and then they get paid a chunk of the profits in forever.
Awesome. And so is that part of NASA Built then? Is that or is NASA Built something completely separate?
NASA Built is my company. InnerSourced is this company. So I guess NASA Built owns part of it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how you own some of it.
Yeah.
And what about any networking that you're involved in now?
So we have a small group that we do run here locally. I don't attend any national level groups. I would like to get back into that scene. I just have kind of been nose to the grindstone for years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Okay. And is that something that you would recommend that everybody get involved in, is find some type of group that, whether that's just a networking group, a mastermind group, but somebody to be bouncing ideas off with and exploring opportunities?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, being an entrepreneur can be very lonely because your friends, your family, that they may not think the same way you do, and so you don't really have anybody to talk to. So going to these groups, you're with like-minded people, and hopefully you're in a group that has done more than you have, so that they've already been there. So it's like, I'm really struggling with this. I'm like, oh, I'd recommend you do this.
Yeah,
and so that just helps you get through that. I mean, the goal is to be the dumbest person in the room.
See if you can
Yeah.
join the group of more experienced people.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome. And we try to offer that a little bit here. We do our monthly client luncheons and some networking events, but at some point too, you need to break off with people that are more in your industry or fit your personality or your industry a little bit.
Right.
A little bit better with that. So,
Yeah.
Okay, before I open it up for questions from everybody else, what advice would you leave with everybody here? What's something that every entrepreneur or small business should be doing that can have an impact on their business or even their career, if it's not even their current business, but just any type of advice that you feel like would have a lasting impact that we can implement?
Something that I've implemented just recently that had a bigger impact than I was expecting was another book called Traction. It's they call it the Entrepreneur Operating System. It had a much larger impact than I thought. It's pretty much a way to keep your team on point, and things never really fall through the cracks, and so you really are able to get the rubber to the road and actually make progress. So much of startups and being an entrepreneur is a flurry of activity, and not much of it is actually getting progress.
Right, just, so many different directions, things you have to take care of. But
Right. And so that has been really helpful for me. I don't know if that's a stage thing where I'm at the stage where it was more impactful, or if it would be just as impactful at a startup level. So it just depends on, I guess, where you're at.
Yeah.
That could be a really powerful thing.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll give a round of applause for Nate.